Good evening. Welcome to the Alumni Field Renovation and Design Committee meeting on October the 4th, 7:30 p.m. at the Littleton Police Department. Tonight we will have a meeting called to order. Our agenda is as follows. We'll have public input. If you would like to be recognized, just please raise your hand. The chair will recognize you. State your name and your address, and any comments should be directed through the chair. We'll then have a stakeholder presentation. Athletic Director for the Littleton Schools, Mike Lynn, is here to present. We'll have an opportunity for member input, another opportunity for public input. We'll approve a couple sets of minutes to approve, and then we're going to look at discussing some strategy for our next meeting with Gail, which is next Wednesday evening, and then we'll adjourn. So hopefully we can be as, I don't know if it'll be as quick as last night's Board of Selectmen meeting, but hopefully it'll be an expeditious meeting. So, right off the bat, I'd like to open it up to any public input, if anybody would like to be heard. Erica?
Yeah.
No. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce the Athletic Director, Mike Lynn, and I will drive the bus and you can present. If you guys want to come around, the presentation's going to be up on the board. Just if you want to swing around.
Yeah, that seems like an inconvenient angle.
No, sit over here.
Well, thanks for having me back. Much of this presentation is somewhat of a repeat from, I don't remember when that was, but we weren't on TV at that point, so I think it's important that we do this again. Chuck, you can get to the next slide. Just before I get started, I just want to make sure everybody knows my background and what I'm qualified to talk about and what I feel like I'm not qualified to talk about. I've been in education for 25 years in athletics. Past 16 years I've been fortunate enough to be at Littleton High School. Last 12 as athletic director and last 15 as the head football coach. I'm not an engineer, thus I'll avoid topics that are best left for the engineer to address, which that person is now on board. And Mike Fontanella, who's in the room, and Kelly Clenchy are the official voices of the Littleton Public Schools. Current challenges, again, much of this is backstory and a little bit old information, but I feel like it's important that we readdress it. Our grass fields, from my perspective, are unable to support the amount of use that is currently demanded by high school and youth teams. Fields are in a constant state of degradation. That's not to say that people aren't working hard to maintain them. It's just that there's so much usage that certain fields in town, and I must emphasize that it's certain fields in town, do get worn in areas because of the nature of the sports that are played on them and the volume of sports played on those fields. We have a limited amount of field space with very high demand for fields. It's somewhat peculiar to me that a rural town, we're somewhat of a rural town, it seems like we didn't secure enough field space at different times to support all the things we're trying to do these days. You know, you go to some surrounding towns, Groton comes to mind, Westford. I'm amazed by the amount of fields they have in their communities compared to us. Development of new active recreation areas is costly and will take years to complete. We've all talked about certain properties in town that could be developed. I think we all in this room know those properties are years away from being done. So, next slide, please. I like this as an analogy. If we were cattle ranchers, I just think it's a good way very simple way to look at the way we're doing things in Littleton right now. If we were a cattle rancher and we had enough land for 5 head of cattle, what would happen if we put 10 head of cattle on that land? You know, our cattle would starve, and in the process, our land would be ruined. From a metaphorical perspective, this speaks to our field situation in Littleton. Again, just reemphasizing that nobody's pointing the finger at highway or anybody. We're putting too much volume on certain fields in town. There's no way that grass fields can sustain, you know, 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock boys lacrosse practices on the same field with well over 100 kids a day practicing on that field, or girls lacrosse for that matter, the fields that see the most usage. Just get into Alumni Field. Again, much of this is old information somewhat, but I know some of these images are on the internet, but here they are again. There's just an aerial shot that we took at one point. This is a major concern at the Alumni Field. The picture on the left, you see that blue line, and on both sides of the field, the drainage trenches are just off of the sideline for sports like soccer and girls lacrosse, sports that use a wider footprint than a football field. That, you can see the slope is starting to really drop off, and then it drops off into a rock trench. That's on both sides. To me, it would be hard to argue that that is a safe situation along the sideline of a fast-moving active sport like soccer or girls lacrosse. On the right, just kind of a close-up of some of the invasive weeds that have really laid claim to that field, and they're not quite as bad this year because again, Highway did a really nice job of watering. They have a new cannon, I believe, that really did a pretty good job of watering it. So it got on top of the weeds a little bit, but the weeds are coming back again. Most years they've really overtaken the field. Picture on the left, that's me, and there's a person taking that picture on the home sideline, just to illustrate the crown that exists on the field. That crown is not desirable for any sport. It is not desirable for football. I know it's an old way of doing football fields, but I've been to other old football fields. I've never seen a crown as dramatic as ours. Officials comment on it. I don't know if you could find a field like that, but for football, it's manageable. It's not desirable, but for other sports, it really wreaks havoc with trying to getting true play out of the ball, as far as literally having a slope on either side of the top of the crown on the field. And on the right, it's just a picture of the amount of space between the rope and the bleachers, and that is where our cheerleaders have to station themselves. There's three risers up to the bleachers. What you're looking at is the third riser down, and we put caution tape between the third and the second risers so that people can go up the first and second risers, but we're in between those last two with our cheerleaders. It's not a great place for cheerleaders to be. You've got steel poles on one side and a steel structure on the other side, and the ground isn't completely level, and it's not really adequate space. We have 22 cheerleaders this fall. Cheerleading is very popular. A lot of kids going out. It's a very cramped space for them to operate. Not desirable for them. On the left, again, images people have probably seen before, but and I'm not a structural engineer. We saw this and we thought that was worthy of taking a picture, that there is a good amount of rust on the structure of the bleachers. The structure itself, we believe, is over 40 years old. Is that safe to say? Yeah. I believe we've come to that determination. And so, technology and codes have changed in that time, and on top of that, it's quite old, and it's obviously showing a good amount of rust. Picture on the right, that's just the back wall of the press box. That is just one snapshot of what's going on in the press box. The front wall is literally deteriorating, falling apart. The roof, the hatch to the roof, just the press box in general is getting to a point where it's definitely coming to the end of its lifespan. It would need significant carpentry work to bring it back. As far as sanitary facilities, bathroom facilities, that's exactly what we have again this fall. Two standard portable toilets and one handicap portable toilet for the home games. I think many people in this room have probably been to a home football game. Maybe you went to one of the first two that we had this year. They were nice nights, and nice weather brings people out. It's amazing when we go to other schools. We literally have 4 to 5 times as many people at our home football games as schools that we go to. We've been to Maynard so far, went to Murdoch. We probably had 10 times as many people as Murdoch had at their field. And that's that's what we have for facilities, because the Russell Street School and the middle school, you know, they're not the high school, and they don't probably want to incur all the people that come to football games in their buildings. We do allow the visiting team to go into the middle school when they first arrive, but for all the cheerleaders, all the spectators, you know, that's what we have for bathroom facilities. I think all of us have been in portable toilets, portable restrooms before. They're not very pleasant, but they do serve their purpose. It would be nice to have running water and flush toilets if possible. And on the right, again, I'm driving this most days, and I was just driving this area on the right after the heavy rains we got. It was all flooded out. The drainage isn't quite working. The pitch isn't working. It gets all flooded out through that driveway down there. You can see the sidewalk is cracked and has weeds continually growing through it. The fence is not in the greatest shape. To me, it's just an eyesore between our two schools down there. Next slide. And now we're heading up to the high school. You know, another field area that is at times compromised. This particular field we're looking at is a field that sees a lot of usage because it's a JV soccer field, and it's also a boys lacrosse field in the spring. And again, there's just another aerial shot that we took. This is probably the sport that has the worst situation of any sport that we have. It's boys lacrosse. And when a lot of times people are referring to all the fields need to be, we're really seeing these images. And a lot of the fields, I mean, our baseball and softball fields are pretty good. Our varsity soccer field is pretty good. It's in pretty decent shape right now. But when it comes time for boys lacrosse, it is embarrassing. So this was the spring of 2015, some pictures we took. This is every day. Chuck, if you go to the next slide. This was this past spring. You can see nothing's changed. You can see the dirt streaming out of those sticks is unbelievable. And, whoops.
You went too fast?
I think you went back. There we go. And, yeah, and then the next slide, please.
Trust it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then this is just kind of gives you an idea of what's in front of the goal mouths at the lacrosse field. Next slide. Here's some shots taken this summer. As you all know, it was a dry summer. And there's some debate over water usage at the high school. Who's going to pay for that? Who's supposed to pay for that? How much are we willing to spend on it? Again, now you're getting into your natural grass versus synthetic cost analysis, but here's the ground level shot. The more dramatic picture is the next slide. That's an aerial shot of the high school this summer. We returned in August for fall practices. That was the condition of what we were practicing on. So for people who are anti-synthetic, I would say that it'd be hard to say that a synthetic field presents more risk than what we were inhaling at that time. The dust was probably 4 and 5 feet high the whole time. The field was burnt out. The conditions were not good, and this is what we returned to. The decision was made that we need to increase the water. We increased the water. We also were fortunate to get significant rainfall, and the fields have bounced back at this point. But the first 2 weeks, 10 days to 14 days, we spent in very bad conditions out on those fields, and that's the football team, the football program, the field hockey program, boys and girls soccer. We were all out there, and it was terrible.
If I just point out, so this is lacrosse field, right? So this is the center, and these are the two goal mouths?
Yes, that's lacrosse all the way over there, yes. And I know it looks a little odd, but each one of those green dots, that's where a sprinkler head is. So if as a town we decided we're going to spend the money to irrigate those fields, if you put down the required amount of water, that entire field would be as green as those islands that you see. That's just where enough water was put down. It's a significant, you have to make sure they get at least an inch of water per week. It's a lot of water to irrigate. So, you know, could it have been green? Yes. At what cost? You know, these are things that we need to talk about as a town and how we manage that property. But certainly there's the ability to have it green, but this year it wasn't. Going back a couple of years, this is just to illustrate some of the challenges we faced with, again, some of our overused natural grass fields. This is the lacrosse field again, and this was after a heavy rainfall, and we had drawn a home MIA tournament game that was to be played on June 2nd, 2014. When you get into May and June, the schedules get very, very tight as far as all the school events and all the athletic events trying to wrap up in like literally a 2 to 3 week period. On this particular day, if we didn't play, we wouldn't have been able to play till like Sunday due to graduations and other things that were going on. So the decision was made, because our opponent was Oakmont, that we would go to Oakmont and play on their synthetic field that afternoon. So that was what Oakmont's field looked like that very same day. And obviously you saw the picture of what our field looked like that same day as well. So the difference between natural and synthetic on the same day right there. Okay, just more, some issues that we faced not having essentially a synthetic surface. In 2013 and 2014, we were fortunate to make it all the way to the MIA state championship game in football, which is played at Gillette Stadium. Both those years, we had significant issues with weather, snow and rain, different issues. And you have to understand that week, winter sports have started too, so even when we do get bad weather, we can't go into the gym because we don't feel right about displacing basketball programs and indoor track programs that are in their first week. So during those 2 preparation weeks, we were traveling over to Acton Indoor Sports, having to pay for a bus. I think we're at $63 an hour this year, and also pay for renting of turf. We were practicing on a hockey rink turf. The size of the turf we were on was a hockey rink, which clearly is not a great size of a field for a football team to try and practice, particularly when you're a spread team and you utilize literally 40 yards of width of the field on every snap of the ball. It's pretty hard to practice your offense when you're on a hockey rink. Both years we played at Gillette, our opponent was Cohasset High School, certainly a town with many financial resources, but they had a full-size synthetic field right outside their door. So while we're getting on a bus to go to Acton Indoor Sports, practice on a hockey rink, they were stepping outside their door on a full-size football field with lines and hash marks and numbers and all the things that you want in order to practice the game properly. So again, just some challenges we face when we're competing at the highest level. This question was brought up, and I think that I said something last time I was here that led to some questions regarding the policy regarding synthetic surfaces in tournament play. I reached out to Peter Smith. He's one of the MIA executives. He is the executive in charge of the football tournament. I wanted to get an answer. I told him that I would probably use this in a public forum, so he knows this is being used at this point. So he said, Mike, following upon our phone conversation as recently as the 2012 MIA football tournament format, the Sports Medicine Committee, okay, the people who are in charge of ensuring safety in sports medicine for the state as commissioned by the MIA, they required that all football playoff games and Super Bowls must be played on artificial turf. That was through 2012. Now, when they went to the change in the football tournament structure beginning in 2013 season, games during the sectional tournament rounds were played at the site of the higher seed, and games during the state tournament rounds were played at neutral predetermined sites. This past season, the sectional final round games in the central and west section were also played at neutral predetermined sites. When selecting venues for these neutral site games, tournament directors strive to utilize turf fields and sites that can host multiple games in a day. I hope this information is helpful. If you have any questions or if we can be of further assistance, please do not hesitate to contact us. So through 2012, the football tournament was a much shorter tournament than it is now. It was all after Thanksgiving. There was a Tuesday play-in game and a Saturday Super Bowl. Those games were 100% by the Sports Medicine Committee required to be played on a synthetic surface. The MIA used to scramble every year to find enough venues in order to play those games, but they had to be played on that. And that surfaced out of several years prior to 2012. We had a really cold week after Thanksgiving, and the ground was literally frozen like concrete. And they had so many injuries on the natural surface that particular playoff season in football. It was brutally cold, unseasonably cold, because the ground has so much moisture at that time of year, and it was so frozen. It was following that year, they said, if we're going to play these Tuesday and Saturday games, they will be played on a synthetic surface. And then with the change in the tournament, when they went to a true state championship, with the playoff games being played prior to Thanksgiving and then after Thanksgiving, there were more playoff games. There was no way you could find all those neutral sites. So many of those games are played at the site of the higher seed. But as you see from Peter's reply here, the neutral site games, they strive to utilize turf fields, and basically I don't know that there was a non-turf field utilized in a neutral site game. The same holds true for most or all of our teams, of the MIA team sports. Lacrosse, field hockey, soccer maybe not so much. We've commented on this in the past, I think in dialogue, that soccer is not a sport that's hard on fields. It really isn't. You can have a soccer field that literally has almost no turf damage after a full season of playing soccer on it and practicing on it, just the nature of the game. And so soccer is probably not as turf-driven as other sports. Some key school district benefits from my perspective of synthetic turf. Again, drawing on the experience that I have, but I'm not an engineer, but I am an athletic director, PE teacher, and a coach for 25 years. Improve quality of play. There's no way that towns, with the resources they have, can maintain grass fields to pristine condition. You'd need to quadruple your staffing, from my perspective, in order to do that. So quality of play typically is better on a synthetic surface because it's always level, it's always dry, it's not rutted out typically, as long as people are doing their maintenance on it. You minimize cancellations. I think that the two slides back to back with our lacrosse field being flooded out and then us playing at Oakmont that day illustrates the point that a turf field is playable when grass fields simply you cannot play on a grass field. You can maximize scheduling because you can schedule vertical, and if you have lights, and by vertical I mean you can stack up practices, even stack up games or tournaments, and if you have lights you can extend that vertical scheduling model well into the nighttime. Turf field in Littleton would benefit 9 school teams in the fall. Boys soccer for night games, girls soccer for night games, possibly some practices too, if maybe the day before a night game, if we could probably adjust some things to get them on there if they wanted to practice on synthetic to get ready for that. But we've only had one night soccer game so far this year. We had the boys versus
Bromfield.
can't remember. Yeah, it wasn't the Bromfield game. But what?
Lunenburg.
Lunenburg. I'm sorry. Yes, Lunenburg.
The other blue team.
And we had a great night there. And it just it's not a great situation for soccer at Alumni. It's actually a little bit embarrassing. Actually, just the crown of it and the fact that the trenches are right on the sideline, and throw-ins take place across a rock trench. I know there's been some online chatter about the moving of the Maynard night games. I've always strived to get the boys team 2 night games and the girls team 2 night games. We had that. We had a double header with Lunenburg, a double header with Maynard, and then we had single gender versus Tingsboro and single gender versus another school. Just so people are clear on it, the Maynard girls coach essentially refused to play on that field. He had a bad experience there with an injury 5 or 6 years ago, and I'm not saying the field caused the injury, but he feels like that field is not a good venue for soccer and essentially refused to come. So once that happened, we decided that because it was a double-header varsity with Maynard, it seemed a little odd to move the girls' game, so we just moved both of them, and then I was able to secure Tingsboro in the Maynard girls' place to come to our field. So the girls do have 2-night contests, and the boys do have 2-night contests this year, but Maynard did refuse to come to our to Alumni Field to play. Field hockey, she can speak to it probably tonight as well. Diane is in the room. Diane, I've asked her in the past if she wanted night games and does not want to play on that field. Does not want to play field hockey on the football field. She can talk to that. She's here. Again, so we don't have any night contests for the field hockey girls at home. But football and cheer. So got a little off track there, but 9 school teams in the fall would benefit from a turf surface, a synthetic surface. Boys and girls soccer would have an appropriate field to play their night contests on. Field hockey would gain it essentially would become their home in the fall. They would practice and play out of there. That would be their standard practice field as well as their game field, because I think we've commented upon this in some of these meetings, that field hockey is potentially the sport that would derive the greatest benefit from a turf surface. We have 2 girls in our program right now that are verbal commits to Division I Holy Cross, and they did that not through really their school teams, but through their club teams who always play on synthetic surfaces. And it's hard to get a coach to come watch you if you're an elite field hockey player on a natural grass field, which is what we have. Football would certainly benefit from synthetic. We'd have all the markings on the field that we would want. Right now, all we have is the hash marks. There's no numbers. There's no ticks. All those things are very helpful for kids to hit their landmarks on different aspects of the game. And this should not get lost on people. Cheerleading, since we started any dialogue about this, I've been saying the cheerleaders need a better space to do their routines than what they have. So this is a major, as we go down the road with the engineering team, if this becomes a reality, we need to make sure that happens. In the spring, 8 school teams would benefit from a synthetic surface. Boys lacrosse, all games and practices. Girls lacrosse, all games and practices for the schools. Baseball and softball, they would gain some preseason, be able to get there. All the schools that are in the area that have a synthetic surface, when March hits and we're stuck in the gym, they're programming their turf surface almost like it is a gym, because they're plugging everybody on there because it's better than being in the gym. In a baseball, softball team that can get out there for 2 to 3 weeks and throw down some rubber bases and work some infield, do some long throwing, do some fungo work on our field, it would be such a better situation than being in a gym all that time. We're typically in a gym for 2 to 3 weeks. And what's that?
Or a parking lot.
Or a parking lot, which we had an injury, again, tough to say if it was the parking lot, but speculative, I would say that it had something to do with it. Boys and girls lacrosse, in my eyes, would be second and third to field hockey as far as sports that would derive the greatest benefit. Boys and girls lacrosse, from my perspective, play so much better on synthetic surface. The ball bounces true. You're not scooping up the dirt like we saw in the images. It's a level playing surface. Kids throw bounce passes. They know where their shot is going to go if they want to throw it off the turf. And again, just synthetic surface can handle the volume of those sports, and grass just cannot handle boys lacrosse. One other thing I think I missed, football. When we do get into late November and early December, if we're fortunate to be there, we would get over to Alumni one way or another, because it would be worth it when the other teams are done for us to get off of our practice field, which typically is literally just either frozen or mud, because it's just seen so much hard usage all fall. And of course, physical education classes if they choose to go out there from Russell Street and the middle school. Next slide. In some other key community benefits, Youth organizations, youth football and cheer, youth soccer, youth lacrosse, outside rentals, tournaments, adult leagues, instructional clinics, summer camps. Again, as I understand, there's quite a market still for turf fields. Certainly on a school that has 495 and Route 2 coming right through its town. Very accessible. I would say that there would be a good market for renting it out and reclaiming some revenue. Possible synthetic turf schedule, fall school teams. This is just a bulletized. I did add a slide in after this. Something Julie was asking for last time I was here. As I said earlier, field hockey would practice and play. All games at Alumni strive for 3 to 4 night games per season. They currently have 0. Boys and girls soccer play all night games at Alumni. Strive for 3 to 4 night games per gender per season. Continue to practice and play daytime games at LHS. Try to get them on the synthetic surface, you know, so they could practice on the field they're going to play on. Do the best we could with that. Maybe be an abbreviated practice, but we would try to do that. They currently have 2 night games per season, and it's not a great venue. Football and cheerleading, we would still play all varsity and JV games there, continue to practice at LHS, move over to Alumni during late November, early December when all the other sports are done, and field conditions at LHS become hazardous, and hazardous is not a subjective term in my eyes at that point of the year. Our field is not good. It's very slippery. Overall schedule, weekdays 2:30 to 6 on daytime game days, 2:30 to 9 on night game days. Most weekdays youth teams could take the field at 6. During the weekend, school teams are usually idle, thus field will be fully available to youth teams during the rentals. And I think the next slide probably will. So here's a possible, I can't give you a definitive week because it changes depending on night games but let's just look at this week. Let's just say on Monday we had a home JV football game. You know, that game would wrap up somewhere between 5 and 5:30, and you could still play JV and varsity field hockey night games on that night. Field hockey typically is a Monday, Wednesday, Friday play day sport. All right, so Monday, Wednesday, Friday typically for field hockey. JV football is always on Monday. On Tuesday, you could have JV varsity field hockey practice there till 5 o'clock. There'd probably be a little bit of an open period there before youth football were to come in. Again, if you can get your football practices off of your grass, it is desirable to do so, because wherever you put football practice, you will not have grass within a month's time. It is a very repetitive sport, and when you're working drills, you have to work drills somewhere. You're going to have kids literally locking up with each other and pushing as hard as they can, and you can just see their cleats churning the turf and just ripping it up as they're doing those drills. There's no way around it. You have to work those drills because that's the kind of contact that happens on every snap. So if you get your youth football practices, you know, under the lights on the field, that'd be great. There's some open slots there, potential rentals if the town wanted to go that direction in the fall. Wednesday, you could have varsity practice, you could have field hockey practice in the afternoon. Again, soccer also. High school soccer is a Monday, Wednesday, Friday play day sport. Our middle school sports tend to play on Tuesday, Thursday, high school Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the fall. So you could have a night soccer game immediately following field hockey practice. It's amazing how many people came out for our night soccer game last week. Again, those varsity boy-girl varsity doubleheaders are tremendous nights where you get both varsity teams playing back-to-back. It's a format I would strive for if we did have a synthetic surface to really bring the soccer community to the field and get them playing on an appropriate field. Thursday, again, field hockey practice, youth football practice, thinking that youth football typically practices on Tuesday, Thursday, and then walk through on Saturdays. I think that would jive well with the fact that field hockey and soccer are Monday, Wednesday, Friday sports, and we could do their night games then. And obviously football's a Friday night sport, and let's just say we had a home game. Saturdays and Sundays in the fall, wide open. Wide open for youth sports, wide open for rentals. The only thing that could maybe is late on Sundays, we might want to get our soccer teams on there or field hockey teams. You know, maybe we could have from like 4 o'clock on the field, so if they have Monday games, they can get a quick practice in. But we don't really do a lot in the fall on Saturdays and Sundays, wide open for youth or rental groups. Next slide. In the spring, our field situation comes to a head in the spring. This is where it really gets, where everything is really crunched, and it tends to be the most controversy and issues between school and youth, and youth, and it gets really tricky in the spring. Boys and girls lacrosse will practice and play all home games at Alumni, strive for 2 to 3 night games per gender per season. Reason why I say 2 to 3, the spring is very, very tricky at night, and 2 to 3 is more realistic than probably getting 4 boys and girls. That'd be 8 dates down there. That'd be a lot to pull off in the spring, just due to all the nighttime events in the schools. Baseball and softball, again, practice at Alumni during preseason period. Prior to the natural grass fields being opened, overall schedule 2:30 to 6 on practice days. Just want to be very clear about this. 2:30 to 6:30 or 7 on daytime game days when we have home lacrosse. Girls lacrosse typically wraps up around 6, but boys lacrosse goes anywhere between 6:30 and 7. And youth teams would have to wait till we were done. 2:30 to 9 p.m. on night game days. Most weekdays, youth teams could take the field at 6 p.m. During the weekend, school teams usually idle. Thus, the field will be available to youth teams in or rentals. If we go to the next slide, again, you can see it gets a lot more crowded in the spring. And a lot of lacrosse, obviously, but lacrosse is the sport that we really need to, if we have a synthetic surface, get off of the natural grass, put it on synthetic, youth and school, and then you will be playing lacrosse under better conditions, and you will have the opportunity to rest or put much lighter usage on your grass fields, whether it's spring youth soccer, whatever you choose to do. But as far as the schools go, we could get all lacrosse off of natural grass. We would go 3 to 4:30 practice block for girls. Our girls typically have practiced earlier than the boys when we have to stack them up when we're using the gyms. So we could go girls 3 to 4:30, and then boys 4:30 to 6. That would leave, in my eyes, 2 blocks, 2 90-minute blocks for youth programs. You could put, I'm not the coordinator of youth, but I would say you could easily we're putting 2 teams on there for 90 minutes. We're putting a varsity and a JV team on there for girls and a varsity and a JV team on there for boys. I would say youth teams could at least put 2, if not 3 teams on there, if we're able to put 2 high school teams on there per 90-minute block. And you would have 2 90-minute blocks if we kept the lights on a timer till 9 o'clock. Lacrosse in the schools is typically a Tuesday-Thursday sport as standard playing days. So you see Tuesday, if we were playing day games and girls lacrosse, let's just say, go to 6 o'clock, and then youth teams could still have 2 90-minute blocks. On a Wednesday, back to a regular practice day with us having 2 90-minute blocks, 2 90-minute youth blocks, and then Thursday, you might have an open block in the afternoon if we were playing night lacrosse that night, because girls are typically away when the boys are home in the sport of lacrosse. And then Friday, back to your standard lacrosse practice model with 4 blocks of 90 minutes each. Saturday, Sunday, youth sports or rental groups. Again, the only thing I would ask is if any of our coaches wanted to hold weekend practices, late Sunday would probably be the best time to block off for school teams to do that. Natural grass schedule fall spring teams. If we were to go with to strive for a pristine natural grass playing field, my perspective would be I would virtually allow no practices allowed on that quote-unquote game field surface. You would want that to be a game field. You would have to stay off it for practices. It's the old model. No games played during inclement weather, following heavy rain or compromised field conditions. We just played on Friday night, and it was anyone's guess when we went up to Murdoch if it was going to pour during the game or just after the game. And as it was, it started raining pretty good in the 4th quarter. Had that rain come earlier and come down heavy during the game, their field would have been ruined essentially in one football game. And you have to, and it was going to rain the rest of the weekend, so there wasn't really any room to move the game. We were going to play that game I was glad it wasn't at our field because I didn't have to make that decision. We've had games, though, where the rain arrived earlier and you're out there playing and the game is going to get played, and it's amazing the damage that can happen in one football game or other sport, but particularly football, if you're playing in heavy rain. No relief for teams during early March or late November because the fields won't be open like they are every year in early March. Would play all home football and cheerleading games at Alumni if it were grass, at about 5 varsity and 5 JV. Would play all night and special occasion games. We'd still strive for 2 to 4 in those sports, try and increase it if the field was desirable for all sports. Youth sports usage of the feature field would need to be limited. I would say only sports that absolutely need to be on that field would be on there. It'd be football. Other sports don't have to play on that field. Field surface require an all-inclusive maintenance plan in order to stay in pristine condition. And if you go to the next slide, I believe it's, okay, so this is Clinton's, Tony Gannon's the athletic director there. He's a good friend of mine. I asked him, and I also got information from his superintendent of schools. They have the nicest natural grass field I think I've ever seen. It is amazing, and there's a good reason why it's such a nice field. They spend $35,000. That includes water, fertilization, and the labor that they contract out. But they spend $35,000 annually in the all-inclusive maintenance contract of one football field per year, one multi-purpose field per year. Use of the field is limited varsity contests only, no sub-varsity and no youth. In addition, Clinton does not have the sport of lacrosse. I did see a couple lacrosse nets on one of their back fields the other time I was over there, so I'm speculating maybe they have a learn to play lacrosse program going on or something there, but they do not have, they're not in the Patriot League or any of the youth leagues. They do not have school lacrosse. In all, Clinton High School plays about 15 contests per year on the field. They play all the varsity football games. They play 4 varsity soccer games. They play a senior night and homecoming, I think, one other thing for each gender. 2 varsity field hockey games and 4 middle school games. Each of their middle school teams gets to play their final game of the year there. So 15 contests a year for $35,000. In the spring, all it's used for is an infield for their track meets. This list could have had, it could have been 10 times as many schools. It just kind of looked at the immediate vicinity, but I honestly don't know of many districts east of 495 that do not have a synthetic surface. And there's certainly along 495, a border town like Littleton right along 495, and you're starting to see more west of 495. But certainly Littleton, to me, I would hope we feel like we're comparable to these towns. I don't see much of a difference between most of these towns as far as socioeconomics and our athletic program. As a matter of fact, our athletic program in recent years has probably been stronger than most of these across the board, most of these programs. So I just collected some testimonials from some of my colleagues. This is Eric Darley up at Oakmont. Benefit of having a synthetic turf field. They were one of the first schools in our league to get one. The benefit of having a synthetic turf field in our school district is measurable. As a result, we've been able to accommodate athletic programs within our high school, middle school, and youth communities. To have a field that is not compromised due to heavy use and or weather, all but guarantees minimal scheduling issues throughout the course of the fall and spring seasons, but most importantly, a safe surface to play on. Steve Deasy, who's the retired AD at Acton Boxborough. At AB, we have opened 3 turf fields over the last 8 years. The ability to meet the needs of our PE department, athletic department, marching band, and community groups have been significantly improved. The new fields have provided us with quality playing surfaces with which we have been able to host numerous practices, games, and events when other communities cannot. Johanna DiCarlo at Westboro. WHS, we could not function without the use of our artificial turf field. We have had our turf field for almost 12 years. It's been tremendous. I got this from her 2 years ago. Their turf field is going on 14 years. I know people keep saying, oh, 8 to 10 years you'll be replacing your carpet. That's not what is my experience with my colleagues who have it. They stretch these fields as long as they can. All these towns have the same issues that our town has. We're ever trying to stretch the dollar, stretch our resources. And yes, they are getting ready to replace theirs, but it has lasted longer than 12 years. I want to say they're on their 13th or 14th year with their field. The entire, Dan Toomey, who's at Westford Academy, the entire town has benefited from having turf here at WA. It gives you nonstop use throughout the school year, especially early March access for all sports and late fall access for football and tournament teams. Some points I've tried to make, that those are really tricky times to keep your teams practicing and playing under safe conditions on natural grass. The PE department, athletics program, youth programs in town, and even the marching band have benefited from having turf here at WA. Also, all the grass fields here have made dramatic improvements over the last 3 years since the turf was installed, because the need to play games on questionable field conditions in the early spring crunch has been reduced. A couple more of these. Barry Haley, who was the AD at Concord Carlisle, they actually have 3 turf fields now. The addition of our 2 turf fields 6 years ago dramatically impacted in a very positive way high school, youth, and adult recreational sport activities. The number of practice and games played on these fields is significant in its impact on quality of play and safety of the participants. They have something over in Concord Carlisle called Concord Carlisle at Play, and these people are just, they get after it, and they've actually just flipped the main stadium to turf too, so they now have 3 turf fields over there. The turf field at Tingsboro has greatly enhanced our overall athletic program and our town-sponsored events. Our coaches and student-athletes love playing on the synthetic surface, and has provided us unique opportunities to host events that we could not otherwise. Jim Hook at Tingsboro. Okay, getting to the end of the slides here, and this is updated since the last time I was here. We went down a percentage point. We're at 67% of our students at LHS play at least one sport. That's 15 to 16 school year data. 301 of our kids last year played a sport. We have 25 total sport offerings at LHS. That includes 4 cooperatives, but we have 21 sports under our roof. We have 39 total teams and 21 varsity teams. Last year, 19 of our 21 varsity teams qualified for the MIA tournament, and by the way we're going this fall, I would say we're going to hit that number again, because everybody's on target to be there again this fall. 8 of our varsity teams won their league championship during the 15-16 school year. They fell just one shy of the 13-14 class, which had nine league championships. Last year, 13 of our graduating seniors went on to play a sport in college. What would be this year? That was when we left school. There's 13 of them. Youth football and cheer. This data is actually a year old. I'm sorry about that. 206 athletes in 14-15. Tom probably has the number for this year. Youth boys and girls soccer, 15-16 data was 487 fall, 524 spring. Youth lacrosse was 197 in 15-16, and youth baseball was 197. My point with those 2 slides is that youth and school sports in Littleton is vibrant, it's strong, it's not going anywhere. It's time maybe to look at making some improvements for these student athletes that is, parallel with what they're doing. In the past 15 years, again, some of these statements might be a little bit subjective. I am a resident in Littleton as well, and I am raising with my wife 2 boys. I have a 10th grader and an 8th grader. We love Littleton. We want to be here, and I see the great things we've done. We built the high school, which honestly is still one of the best looking buildings. We go to all kinds of places. Some people are building school buildings, and I look and I'm not really sure what they're trying to accomplish, but every time I drive up to ours, it's a very, very aesthetically pleasing building. Same thing with the middle school, and obviously the Russell Street renovation came in under budget. Littleton Police Department, the building we're in is fantastic, and I'm sure the fire department's going to be fantastic. So brick and mortar, we've done a tremendous job, but I think we've fallen short on some recreational opportunities and improving our fields. And, a track is another good example. What it took to get that track done. We had a track that was closed for, I think it was at least 2 years. Our kids we did not host any home meets. And it was amazing to me what it took to get that done. That to me was just a community resource that needed to be fixed. And from my perspective, as a resident, a taxpayer, and somebody who works here, I don't think it should have been as difficult as it was to provide that facility for the kids and for the adults who use it. We've missed opportunities to renovate athletic facilities as some part of our major construction projects. And again, we do not have a feature outdoor athletic facility to match the buildings. We've built the track, we've built buildings, but we're missing that central gathering place where you can come for a football game, for soccer games, for field hockey, for lacrosse, and as it's looking now, or as it's always looked, we would get an improved softball field in the process too, with, if that, what I've seen is, becomes a reality, the drawings that I've seen. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mike.
Drink of water. I need some water.
Thank you very much. Everybody, there's some plugs. All right. Well, let's get that
You need it though? You're gonna need it.
Yeah, should put him in the minute. Should put it.
Yeah, it's too large of a file, so I'll get it.
Thank you. Mike, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming back. It's the second time's a charm. Unfortunately, we're unable to we were getting going pretty early on, and we weren't able to coordinate with LCTV. So LCTV's here tonight. We're able to put this presentation on LCTV. It'll be available for people to go back and look at if they're not watching right now. And appreciate the education with each viewing. There's something else. You've added some stuff to this one. Appreciate all the work and effort you put into it, and all your input. That helps us, I think, as we gather information from all the stakeholders. I think it's important for us to understand what your opinions and thoughts are. I'd like to open it up to the board and find out if we have any questions of Mike after the presentation.
I don't really, well, I have questions, but they're questions I know the answers to, but I just want to get it out there. Like when we built the high school, we played soccer and field hockey in the fall up on those fields, and then in the spring, we just had baseball and softball, no other spring sports up there on the grass, right?
Correct. So the field that we play lacrosse on sat idle
Right.
in the spring.
And even in the softball and baseball outfield, that's light traffic. So
Yep.
they were basically resting, and then they certainly rested after that. And
Yep.
we did our maintenance. We seeded, we watered, some fertilizing, cut them. We had that plan in place, and the fields were fine, right? They were more than playable. They
Yes.
were in great shape, right?
Yes.
Obviously, the drought this year is a little bit of an aberration, and those pictures were dramatic. But you stressed it. It's when we introduced lacrosse that all hell started to break loose because of the amount of traffic and the type of traffic, the impact that they have on the fields. We didn't change our maintenance plan. We didn't stop maintaining them. We still cut the grass, we watered, we seeded, we fertilized, but there was just no way we could keep up with the amount of traffic and the type of traffic.
Lacrosse is like a Ferrari of sports, right? We went from 0 to 100.
Right.
In 5 seconds, whatever.
And just the only other field that's in absolute failure is the one at the middle school where we play football and youth lacrosse. That one wasn't a great field to begin with. It wasn't designed for that kind of traffic. But when we got two sports that we never had, when the high school was built, we didn't have youth football in Littleton and we didn't have lacrosse in Littleton. And when we added those two sports, we didn't add capacity, and we didn't have the funding to add staff and/or materials to keep up these fields. And now that's why we're in the situation we're in. The fields that we don't have lacrosse on, like Corper, the Russell Street fields where they play soccer, those fields are still fine with the current maintenance level. They could be better.
Yep.
We talked about that, but they are certainly serviceable relative to the traffic, the amount of traffic and the type of traffic that's on them. The maintenance that we do is sufficient, and the funding that we provide for that maintenance via assessments, albeit to the youth sports leagues. It's not a line item in our budget because it's not funded out of the appropriation. It's funded by assessments, by use, by the youth sports. And those fields are fine. And and if the point I think you were making was if we can put a synthetic surface somewhere, offload lacrosse and football to a degree onto that one, youth football, we can probably reclaim the fields at the high school and get them back on the same maintenance plan. That probably will respond very well, and then be the way they used to be when we first built the high school, fully able to sustain what we typically projected as the usage, which was soccer in the fall, and then just baseball and softball in the spring. And then they can recover, and that cycle will be fine. And even if you add a little bit of use on them, some youth lacrosse practice for the littler kids or something, or some, you know, youth soccer, which they don't use those fields, but maybe they could because we're no longer using them for lacrosse, that would be sufficient. We could sustain that usage with the maintenance plan that we have in place.
Yeah,
Or with tweaking it. We wouldn't have to like double it or triple it. We could just, you know, make it good enough.
and I would add that you basically said we have two compromised fields, the one at the high school, the one beside the middle school. I would add Alumni as a compromised
True,
field,
as
just
a
because
facility, yeah.
I feel
Yeah,
like it's
I
not a
agree with you.
safe field for anything
I agree
but
with you.
football.
As much as it is compromised to a degree, but the benefit of rehabbing it is to allow for, you're right, safer usage, multi-usage. But it also, again, is, you talked about how it would be great to, how the night games are so much of a success because it's the only field with real bleachers. I mean, the
Right.
parents and the fans that have to go to the soccer games or lacrosse games in the afternoons sit on lawn chairs or stand on the sideline. Their view is like this instead of like this.
Yeah.
It would be nice for a wider swath of the community to be able to take advantage of the only facility that we have in town that allows for that type of viewing experience. Plus, you have, you know, concession opportunities, fundraising opportunities. You have the lights, so you can play at night. Like you said, the varsity nights are the same thing in basketball. We can do it
great.
because it's indoors and everything. Those are the best nights. The kids love them. The families love them. If we could offer that opportunity to more sports more often, you know, that's obviously a big benefit. But to me, it's, you know, we've heard talk of all our fields need to be reassessed. I don't necessarily think that's the case. At some point, we are going to have to add capacity because we're growing as a town, and you showed the numbers of what our participation levels are like. They're tremendous, and that's a good problem to have. So at some point, we're going to have to add capacity, whether it's natural grass, more synthetic, a combination of both, depending on what we're trying to do. You know, we'll figure that out. But right now, just to get back to where we used to be, to a baseline level, you know, if we can put one synthetic surface in there, get that high traffic, high impact sports off of the natural grass fields, we can at least get back to where we used to be. Then we can figure out how to move forward from there.
Absolutely, and you know, the town and the school is growing. Last year, I think we had 447 students. We're at 471 right now. I mean, I think that you probably have a better grasp on that than anyone.
Trying.
We need to probably get ahead of what's coming.
Right.
And it's probably going to hit us in a lot of ways in this town when some of these developments really come online. But certainly our field situation is only going to get worse with more kids coming to town and probably more dads want, you know, more moms and dads wanting to be youth coaches and more higher enrollment at the high school and more need for more field space. But you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, in no way in what we're saying do we want to give the illusion that we're anti-lacrosse, because I'm the athletic director that I listened to kids, and it was clear that we needed lacrosse in Littleton. I don't know, I think the boys might be going on 9 or 10 years, and the girls were a year or two behind that. But it was clear that this sport was going to be a sport that was going to take off here once we gave kids the opportunity to play it. So we can't, I know some people want to blame the fields on the sport of lacrosse. It's not fair to do so. Just, the kids love playing lacrosse, and by nature that sport is very repetitive in certain areas, but those kids have every right to play that sport just as a kid has a right to play field hockey or baseball. But it does happen to be a sport that's hard on fields, and athletic directors in our league, out of the 26 schools, boy, it's up to like 15 or 16 schools now have it. One of the things I tell the ADs when they're getting it, I said, you want to start dialogue now about getting a synthetic field because lacrosse is very hard on your grass fields.
That's all I got.
It's a lot.
And on fields that used to rest.
Right,
It doesn't even matter,
right.
let's just say we had a different sport that wasn't lacrosse. Let's say we had rugby as a sport. It doesn't matter what the sport was. We were now going to put a sport on rectangular fields that used to sit idle. Doesn't matter what the sport is. They used to sit idle, and now there's a sport on it. Just so happens it's a very harsh sport, but any sport on it would have been more wear and tear than what we were experiencing.
You showed that the plan that Clinton has in place, and the key component of that plan, I mean, you can talk about the $35,000,
Yep.
but the key component of that plan is they rest it. They
Right.
don't use it. They deliberately underuse it to keep it in the shape it wants to be in. And that's what we've done with with Alumni for the longest time, we deliberately underused it in order to keep it playable for the 5 or 6 home football games, a couple of soccer games for the boys, a couple of soccer games for the girls, and then when we added lacrosse, we would play down there some. But to me, that's not a winning strategy, especially in a town where we don't have enough capacity to begin with. We can't afford to underutilize the facility. We have to, and what we really should be doing is what you stressed was, we should be putting ourselves in a position where we can maximize the use of it so that we can rest the other fields and get them back to where we know we can have them, because we've had them that way for a long time. We were able to go about our business and keep them playable. It was only until we added 2 sports, you know, 1 boys sport, 1 girls sport, lacrosse, and then we brought youth football in, and we gave them 2 fields.
Right.
And it didn't work. And
Right.
you know, they were late to the party, and we fit them in where we could, and we tried to make it work, and it's not sustainable.
And one other point that did not come through in my presentation, but it's just dawning on me that I wanted to make this point. We have now gotten to the point where when I'm scheduling non-league contests, our field hockey and boys and girls lacrosse coaches are basically saying to me, get as many turf teams, turf schools, we'll go to them. And she's nodding her head right here, okay, because sometimes people think I'm not being truthful or making things up. Diane is right here. She said to me, Mike, we're going to Concord. She wants to play Concord Carlisle. I said, we're going to go play Concord Carlisle? It seems like a stretch for us. They have synthetic, we want to go there. We want to go to Neshoba Regional. We're going to go to
Middlesex.
North, no, there's another school.
We're going to Oakmont.
Oakmont. So any of these kind of crossover games or non-league games that we could schedule, if we could find schools that we could go to, she has an 18-game schedule. She's not going to play 9. She's not going to play 9 home and 9 away. We have more away games than homes. Same thing will happen in lacrosse. We will go on the road instead of playing at our field for our non-league and crossover games. It could result in a 7 home, 11 away split to our schedule, but I do not see that changing for our field hockey and boys and girls lacrosse teams. They would rather go play. We have a lacrosse coach right here. He's nodding his head too. So this is factual information. They would rather go play an away game on a synthetic surface on a field that's not compromised than, even if it's our turn. Let's say next year we're going to play Concord Carlisle again, field hockey. When I call Barry Haley, I'll say, Barry, we'll come to you again. You get another home game out of us, because we're not going to bring you to our field. Our field right now in field hockey, yes, because of the harsh summer, there's a giant bare spot in front of one of the goals. And it's not small, it's large. It's probably 15 yards, 20 yards wide or something like that.
And now we're underwater.
Right, and now it's wet. So, you know, we will go away year after year to the schools that we, non-league schools that we schedule to go play on synthetic surface until I guess we have one, because it's just a better game. In those 3 sports, it changes the game. Her sport in particular is a different sport, but lacrosse is just a vastly improved sport on synthetic surface. I'm saying that as a parent who never played. I played baseball in the spring, but both my boys played lacrosse, and I remember every time we go to away lacrosse, seeing the ball bounce, seeing the way they play the game on synthetic, what a different game. And I've seen the field hockey team playing away contests on turf. What a different game. What a fast game. What an exciting game. The girls are, their cardiovascular condition is really being challenged on a synthetic field because of the amount of running they do up and down the field compared to a grass field, where oftentimes they're pushing the ball through the grass, and now it's tic-tac passing and it's a different sport. So, sorry, I wanted to get that in there. I did not put that in, that didn't come through in the presentation.
And to that, Mike's point's perfect, because not only have we said non-league games, we've played 2 away league games in the same season to be on turf. Tingsboro, for example, early in the season, Alumni was closed, so we went to play in Tingsboro. Second time around, we just went back to Tingsboro. We didn't say it's a better game. We would play on turf every single game if we could.
Diane, do you mind if I just open it up if you have anything to add or any questions?
So I think, too, that in field hockey, we are such at a disadvantage when it comes to the postseason, because we do end up playing on turf. And the problem is that, like with football, they have to go over to Acton and practice on turf over there. We don't have turf, so we actually end up having to do the same exact thing, because all of our games end up being on turf. And so we're at that disadvantage. So yes, that's one of the other reasons why we try to get as many games as we can on turf, because it gets us prepared for postseason, because we have already, you know, qualified for postseason. You know, we're 9-0-1, you know, we've qualified, and, you know, so in order for us to get any better, we've got to prepare ourselves. And, you know, our field is horrible. You know, and it's not, as Mike said, it's not, you know, the highway's fault. But in order for us to get better athletes, we've got to give them something better. You know, and the field is not going to get better in a year. You know, you can do all the maintenance you want in a year. It's not going to get better, and it's not going to, you know, I've had college coaches call me, send me emails, and they say to me, when are you going to play on turf? Because that's when I'm going to come watch the girls play. They're not going to come to Littleton, because it's not a game when they come to Littleton. You know, they're trying to get the ball through the grass, and it's being stopped. The ball bounces all over the place. It's not a true game. It's a true game when they're playing on turf. And you know, it's like night and day. If you watch the Olympics, that's how field hockey is supposed to be played. You know, and like Mike said, I have 2 girls that have already given verbal, you know, for next year. I mean, it's wonderful. We've had girls in the past that have gone to D1 schools, you know, and we'll have them in the future. And it's not because of what we are able to offer them on our grass fields. It's because what they do outside of Littleton High School. It's because their parents are willing to go that extra mile to you know, push them outside, you know, club sports. You know, they're able to do that. Well, not everybody's able to do that. And if we're able to give them something better, then they don't have to push that extra mile to, you know, they don't have to spend that extra money. They're already spending that money in their taxes here in Littleton. Why not give it to them already?
Thank you. All right. Julia's questions. Any questions relative to the presentation? Or?
No, I don't have a question. I did want to mention one thing. So one of the things we talked about last time that wasn't televised that we heard about this time was the town of Clinton, and the fact that they allowed the state to build a dam in their town, and so they have like the unlimited funds. I just kind of thought that was important to, you know, continue that perspective into this conversation. And then just the 35,000, you know, let me take a step back. You know, I appreciate all the blood, sweat, and tears, you and Diane. I mean, it's clear you guys are passionate about our students, and I feel fortunate I'm in a town where, you know, we have people who are very passionate about the students and passionate about sports. I think athletics is, you know, incredibly important. You know, I think it goes along with school. You know, and I would like to see some data, because $35,000, you know, we have to put that away every year to replace a field. And so although I think there are compelling reasons. I think there's pros, you know, the usage, you know, no doubt the usage is a pro. The watering, no doubt, is a pro. However, the high school fields, that corner of the softball field and where the field hockey teams play, there's obviously some clay close to the surface, and there's a spot that just doesn't drain. You know, I talked to Kevin Hunt about the watering, and we put 18% of the water on the fields that we should have. And granted, should we be putting this much water is also a conversation. You know, and so there are just a lot of factors on here, but I'm having a hard time getting there with, you know, fields that we aren't doing what we're supposed to be doing in the first place, you know, leading to.
We're not necessarily, it's not, we're doing what we should be doing in the fields. Maybe the exception of the water, I grant you that. But
like proper construction, highway department said, I asked the highway department about the water, and he said those fields are so compacted that the water, even if we did the water, it's not going to get there. So I think, you know, none of us are engineers. I mean, so that's what I'm saying. None of us are engineers. I think we need information.
I absolutely agree with you, but I think that we're getting a little bit waylaid onto the high school fields.
Yep.
And what we're charged with is alumni field.
Yeah,
sure.
So
the other point I would like to make is, there's one spot on that huge expanse of grass that has an engineering problem. But the point that Mike made was, before we had year-round usage, or close to year-round, not in the summer,
Yeah.
the soccer fields at the high school were fine. With the maintenance plan that was in place, which was far short of the amount of money and time and effort that a town like Clinton puts into one underutilized field. We can maintain the fields. We have maintained the fields. Historically, we've been able to do it. We've shown that we've been able to do it. And to say that we haven't is erroneous. We have. And when you look at Corper and you look at the Russell Street School fields, they're fine. Again, can they be better? Yes. Are they pristine? No. But they are certainly playable. The only two fields that are in disrepair are the ones that we put lacrosse on. That's a fact. And if we take lacrosse off those fields, and we'll have to do some work, some capital outlay to get them back because they're in such a state of disrepair. But once we get them back to where we are, the plan that we had in place, plus some degree, not a significant degree, will be fine because they will get the rest. The key is rest. It's not how much seed you put on, it's not how much water you put on. You can put all the water and all the seed you want, but if you don't rest them, they will fail. So we need to get into a situation where, if we are able to get into a situation where we're giving them the rest, we can do the rest of it, then they won't be in failure any longer. Except for the one that has an engineering problem. But that's a small piece of a very big surface.
And that is being addressed. That is an article on town meeting, on special town meeting for field study and analysis. And
What are we talking about, the high school softball
we're
field?
talking about all fields. So
No, we talk, the engineering problem, we talk about the high school
We don't have to
softball.
get too
Yeah,
far
I'm
into
sorry
that.
about that.
I don't think it's relevant though.
So-
For the conversation relative to alumni field, I don't think that the
But
engineering at
it
the
speaks
high school
to-
softball field is.
It speaks to the usage, you know, the usage we can get, and the comparison of failing fields to a well-constructed grass or synthetic field. That's the point, that's
Okay. Yeah,
really the
I'll
point I
grant
was
you
trying to make. That's all
I
I
think that we,
was trying to
yeah,
say.
so we need to do our diligence, the NBC needs to do their diligence, and Gail has to do their diligence to make sure that it is engineered properly. And I have no reason to believe that that wouldn't be the case.
Yeah, I would think anything we put in is going to be better than pretty much anything we have.
Disagree.
Yeah, it
You
should-
won't get, no, whatever. You're not gonna get what you're talking about off of a grass field out of Alumni. You're gonna have to, you're gonna have the same problem, you're gonna have to shut down that high school field to repair it. So then you're gonna have to force the boys' high school lacrosse and youth boys lacrosse to another field, which they'll end up ruining. It's a vicious cycle, and we're just gonna kick this can a mile down the road. If it's not done right, you're never gonna get a field done right. It's not. You're gonna have to move those boys lacrosse around the entire town, and you're gonna ruin every town and field.
We're doing it right now.
We are.
We closed the field, and now, so, because we closed, this is how tight we are with fields. We closed the field beside the middle school, so now, youth football is now practicing on the varsity game field. I was just down there last week, turning on the lights for them, because the field that they actually had lights installed so they could practice, because they practiced till about 7:30, is closed. And I said, begged the question, I said, okay, where are we going to put them? Because they raised that money and they worked with LELWD to get those lights. And then the only answer was, well, we're going to put them on Alumni. And I'm saying, well, here we go again with, we're putting youth sports. My son is on Tom's team, so I can see from both sides, but I have to be the AD first, I think. I say, I don't really like putting youth sports on our featured grass game field, because I can't be assured that people are going to move their drills around and they're not going to create in dirt spots. So we come out on a Friday night for, a senior who's playing, we have 2 home games left, he only gets like 4 home games, and it's a special time for a kid. I don't know, I mean, it just seems like it'd be hard to do what we want to do on grass. And I can say with pretty complete confidence, the sports of boys and girls lacrosse aren't going anywhere. They are continuing to grow. Those kids will keep on coming. Those sports are growing every year, and we are going to be faced in the spring with, what are we going to do with these sports from now till, I think, forever. You couldn't have known that. Lacrosse as a public school sport in this area of the state, 10 years ago, I don't even know, I think that was just about when we were starting our program. It's amazing how far we've come. In 10 years, the amount of participation in a 10-year period has been amazing. And every town that sport goes to sees the same phenomenon happen. Year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, it just grows. And that's what's going on. The sport is just growing tremendously within the towns it's already established, and it's growing into new towns every year. So it's not going anywhere. So we're going to be faced with this spring issue of what do we do with all these sports.
Yeah, so I guess my other question was that, so no doubt if it's just a game field, it's not as utilized as if, you had a synthetic surface. I guess what are your thoughts on, if Alumni was just a grass game field, could it support, football and lacrosse, or are we having problems again from a game if we put practices elsewhere and we just do the games? And money questions of, is it worth it aside?
Yeah.
Is it possible? Do you know?
So the issue is, we tried not to, years ago, put a lacrosse program on Alumni as a practice site. I think we sat in a room for 2 hours, and we tried to come up with every possible scenario. And at the end of the night, and it was a joint meeting with the schools and PRCE and all the department heads or the presidents of the different sports. And then I said, we just have no other choice. And that year, we opted to put boys lacrosse on the football field. And then that lasted 1 year, because literally, that's the year after that we put in $7,000 worth of sod up the middle, which didn't last all that long. And the other issue was, with no protected netting system between jet, it was not safe to have boys lacrosse there because the ball just gets fired too fast. And we said, okay, let's put the boys back up to high school and move the girls there, which is where they've been ever since we made that decision. But we still haven't, we can't put them inside the track because we have track practice every day, and we use that for throwing javelins and discus and all these other events. We've got middle school baseball on that field. We've got middle school softball on the jet field. Up at the high school, we've got baseball going on, softball going on, and we've got boys lacrosse on that field. Literally every patch of green grass that we have till 5 or 6 o'clock when the changeover happens, we are using in the schools. I mean, we don't get bussed over to Shaker Lane, but that's not really feasible. I mean, that's the only grass I can think of that we could go to. Corpor's another spot, but again, Corpor's never really been a spot that we've looked at as a school property that we would go to and has its own, logistics. So yes, if you spent this money on a facility and you upgraded the field that we currently are on, I would say, well, we can't responsibly practice on that field now because it is a grass game field at that point. So we would need to figure out what we're doing with girls lacrosse.
Right, and the shoulder season issues too. Okay, great.
Yeah, the March and the
I'm just trying to get a
November, December. Yeah, those issues are for real. When we're out there in November, December practicing football, it is literally.
But it's the March one that's worse.
The March is worse,
Right, because that's multiple teams.
And the hard part is, it's hard to, certainly we've competed just fine, but we're in gyms, and schools that have a turf field, they're out on the turf field. Maybe they're only getting an hour-long practice, because like I said, we would say baseball gets an hour, softball gets an hour, boys lax gets an hour, girls lax gets an hour, and that would take us to 7 o'clock, and I'm sure the youth people would be like, what about us? And maybe we'd then go like 7 to 9 or 7 to 10 with youth. But even if an hour on a full-size field is better than 90 minutes in a gym. Okay. And also, again, responsibly using our buildings. I think that's like the 3 most stressful weeks of the year for me. We've got baseball and softball and boys and girls lacrosse in gymnasiums. Gymnasiums have glass, glass windows.
Too small.
Cabinet.
too small,
Cabinet.
scoreboards, just things that over the years, lights get broken, things happen, the kids are they're firing hard balls around. It's terrible. And the gym floor gets marked up, and it's not a good situation. And,
Don't tell me that.
What's that? Well, basketball season's over by that point, but.
For you.
Yeah, so, again, I'm obviously here, if you can't tell, as an athletic director, as a coach, and as a parent, I'm a big fan of synthetic surfaces, and I think they are, I just think that they've been groundbreaking for sports. You look at Gillette Stadium. Gillette Stadium tried to go with natural grass, and then they made a decision that in the NFL, if you have a 1 o'clock game time, you're playing at 1 o'clock, no matter what weather you get. And there was that one game where the field was like destroyed, and they flipped that to a synthetic surface in like record time. RAD did it, and they dropped everything. They got in there for the New England Patriots to get them ready for like a game they had, I don't know, it was like 2 weeks or something like that.
Game. Yeah, they had a bye week.
But they threw in the towel. They're like, this isn't going to work in New England. It just, the weather's too unpredictable, and they have to play at a certain time though.
Mike, do most high schools that have lacrosse, do most of them play on turf?
Yes, in Eastern Mass, again, I think it would be easier to list in Eastern Mass the districts that don't have synthetic surfaces than do. In Central Mass, where we are here, it's hit and miss. It's still, every school wants it. Probably many schools right now are going through the same process we are. Certain schools have been able to get it: Tingsboro, Lunenburg, Oakmont, Wachusett, Leominster. I'm just rallying these off the top of my head. Schools in our Grafton has 2 of them. Shrewsbury right now, I'm friends with the AD. They're trying to get 2 fields at Shrewsbury. They're just going for it. They want one. They want one for the lower field for field hockey. They want to do their feature game field. All the same reasoning. You can't maintain grass fields to the level that they want. You can't keep grass fields in pristine condition with all the weather challenges and all the volume of usage. And you have a compromised field for a lot of times for the rest of the season, because you really can't get in there and fix it until the season's over, if you have the means to fix it.
So is pristine grass necessary, or like what's good enough grass? Does that exist?
What's good enough grass? Well, the problem is, again, on a soccer field in Littleton, we could keep good enough grass. I honestly think we could. We did. It's just when you get into sports like football and boys and girls lacrosse, and good enough grass really still isn't good enough for a sport like field hockey, because it's.
Yeah, no, I'm understanding.
Yeah, you'd have to have that grass literally cut to putting green.
Yeah, it sounds like a golf course.
Yeah, if you could do that, I'm sure field hockey would be would be happy with that, but that's not realistic either. So for a sport of field hockey, that's a bit of an anomaly. That's a synthetic sport by design now. The biggest college programs don't even use the type of synthetics, the multi-purpose synthetic surface. They're using that old school stuff.
Yeah.
The real tight green.
That's what Harvard uses.
It is, yeah. It's right there as you make the turn there. And but the stuff we're talking about will work just fine. We don't need an old AstroTurf style one just for field hockey. Just want that
I'll just take any sip.
My shins are screaming right now.
one. Yeah. But good enough grass is a hard. It's obviously something we can't really accomplish here in Littleton with the volume.
Sure. Yeah, I recognize we have a lot of challenges
Yeah.
here.
For all that we're trying to do, Mike, you mentioned the word capacity. The only alternative, I think that we're going to be faced with making a determination here pretty shortly. But from speaking with Ian Lacey from Tom Irwin, speaking with the different designers that came in and we interviewed, every one of them, when asked point blank what would accommodate everything that we want to accommodate, came back with synthetic. So it's a number of professionals that have given their opinion. We've got the athletic director who we trust and have under our employ. So I think that we're getting closer to making a decision. And trust the decision that the athletic director has offered us tonight. Mike, I think you had some questions as well.
Yeah, so just going back to like the early spring, like we experienced it. I'm one of the U9 lacrosse coaches. We experienced it. I put kids out in their first game that had never played lacrosse before. That was their first lacrosse experience. We couldn't get out on the fields, understandably. But someone pointed out that you only lost 6 days of practice according to the MIA schedule when you could actually get out there in the spring. But that's even if that's, whether it's accurate or not, 6 days is huge, is it not, when you're preparing for a spring sport? When you're, for lacrosse in particular, you guys have plays out there, you're running plays. To have to do that in a gym as opposed to out on a field, I would assume that's a big deal.
Yeah, 6 days.
I think that'd be before the fields were opened up.
Right,
I think then we lost more days because of the rain. That's why we ended up in the situation we were in.
Yeah, I can't remember specifically last spring if it was only 6 days and we were outside. I know 2 springs ago, I want to say we were indoors for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
We were, that was one of the big snow winters. I want to say we were indoors for 3 weeks. I want to say it was 2 springs ago. We were literally, the coaches and kids were losing their minds in the gym, being inside like that for 3 weeks. This past spring, I don't know how many days it was. It was a good amount of days, but even 6 days, it's a good amount of time to lose. But honestly, 6 days would be a good spring for us. More times, it's more like 2 weeks,
Yeah.
2 weeks plus, that we're in gyms or we go to the parking lots or we start transporting to off-site facilities.
Yeah, that's what we ended up having.
I mean, the thing you got to remember in New England is the winter sports end, but the spring sports don't start because they can't.
Yeah.
It's not that the MIA would care. They would let us start. It would be nice to have 4 weeks of preparation, but you don't have the opportunity. So you have about 2 weeks before your first contest. So you're right. It doesn't matter if it's 6 days, 3 days, or 2 days. You almost don't have enough time to prepare anyway. So anything that cuts into that. Now, having said that, we all used to be in the same boat because there was no synthetic surfaces for anybody, even at the biggest schools. So but it was only typically baseball and softball, track.
Yeah.
Lacrosse is a new thing. So we all managed to make it work. But what's happening now is you're seeing an inequality develop because there are towns that can support it because they have the synthetic and the kids benefit from it, and then the rest of us are trailing the curve a little bit. And in a season that's already too short to prepare, why are we not taking advantage? It gets harder to understand why we're not taking advantage of an opportunity to allow our student athletes to prepare accordingly, and have the most rewarding experience that they can get out of something like that. They're making the commitment,
So I know we close our fields whenever there's rain for the youth sports anyways. I'm always checking the website anytime I see rain in the forecast. But going back to what you said about your Murdoch game, you didn't know when it was going to rain. Do you ever cancel high school football for rain?
I absolutely, given our situation at Alumni, that Friday night, and I would have bet, I would have placed the wrong bet on that night. I probably would have postponed that game because when we get down there, we don't have great options for as far where we would go for shelter, for one thing, but I don't want to tear up the field and then have to answer to people as to why'd you play, so I would probably err on the side of caution. I was glad I didn't have to make that call, but yes, you would move games. I would move games, and the other thing too, and I wish I had pictures of it, we've played some mud, quote-unquote mud bowl games over the years, and we do seem to have had an inordinate amount of injuries during those games. We had one a couple years ago up in Narragansett. I had 3 serious injuries up there in one game, and I don't remember a game in good weather where we had 3 serious season-ending injuries in one game. And it just, when you get that heavy rain and you're slipping and sliding like that, it gets very dangerous out there. And once you're there, especially a football game, if it was a soccer game, you're talking 2 officials on site, you could just say, look, guys, I don't care if you think we should play. Get in your cars, go home, we're going to pick this up. You're talking a football game where you've got 3 police details there, that's $600 right there. You've got a full officiating crew there, that's another like $600 worth of officials that are on your site. You've got other people you're paying. You're paying the money. You're going to get that game played. There's no backing out of it. When you decide you're going to play, you're playing. And if If the weather arrives earlier than you think, and Friday was a perfect example, because as we all know, it poured Friday night, all day Saturday, and we were looking at it the whole day thinking, boy, are we going to get this in, or are we going to get soaked out there? And my thought was, I hope nobody gets hurt. And the second thought was, it's not my field, so I'm not going to have to answer to the highway, my superintendent, the principal, or whoever else is upset that we played, and, you know, that I didn't have the foresight to, you know, have Mother Nature's vision as far as what time it was going to come, so.
So on your, in your presentation, I counted 20 communities that you listed that have turf, synthetic turf. Handful of them had multiple fields. Based on the testimonials you put up there, it seems like you have good relationships with a lot of the ADs in the area. Any horror stories of increased injuries, infections, illnesses due to synthetic turf?
No, not at all. And, you know, I know that there's been some dialogue that some people are trying to say that the maintenance between synthetic and natural, the maintenance on synthetic field, you know, in a practical world, we go to Lincoln Sudbury every year for their passing league. They have 3 turf fields on their property, and you know, they do not in the real world. They maintain the pellets, and really that's about all it takes. You know, they are relatively maintenance free, or low maintenance, I should say, in comparison to a grass field that's well maintained. There is no comparison. I'm not gonna. I can't buy into that they're even close. It's not even close. When you talk about a natural grass field, having to water it, and I don't know if people would be comfortable with the amount of water you would have to put down a natural grass field to keep it green. It's a lot of water, okay? To cut it, to repair it, to continually stripe it, because every time you cut it, you have to put new paint down and fertilize it, as opposed to grooming rubber pellets. I can't even see the comparison there.
So no stories, so back to no
Yep.
stories of staph infections?
No.
Blown out knees, you know, other than what you would normally see?
No, and the only thing that I have heard, just to be completely truthful, is I know Groton School put in one of the, I understand that they put in the pork-a-nut one.
Yeah.
Supposedly, there was a couple kids who had nut allergies and might have had a little bit of a reaction to that, but I didn't hear that from the AD. I heard that secondhand. So, I mean, that's the only thing I've ever heard that of a school having problems with any of these types of, you know, adverse health effects.
All right, that's all I have for questions. One of the things that hit me on your presentation was 17 teams, high school teams would benefit from synthetic turf, and multiple youth sports teams. That's a lot of kids. That's all I got.
Carl, any questions?
Just real quick, the only small thing we haven't touched on is youth sports are a feeder program to high school sports, and one of the reasons for our success in Littleton, I think, is we have an awesome youth football program. Youth lacrosse is strong. We don't have a youth field hockey program. There's no feeder system at all because of grass. Mm-hmm. So my 10-year-old has been playing on turf field hockey for a couple of years. You can't play because you're not strong enough. Your arms literally can't push the ball on grass. So you really can't have any kind of youth field hockey program at all unless you have turf. She played this Saturday in the pouring rain and had a blast. She didn't fall once. She got soaking wet, but loves the game. And all those kids came off the field like happy as could be. No mud, they just played the game. You can't do any of that stuff. So Diane's literally getting kids, sometimes in high school, who have never touched a stick. The middle school program, I think, is growing, and they're having some success, but there's no feeder program at all for field hockey. And it's not possible without a turf field. And if we had turf, she could run tons of clinics, camps. Sheila Kish runs a great camp on grass, but I'll be honest, she has to do a lot of prizes and toys and treats to get those kids to leave thinking it was fun, and the kids do have a great time. There's probably less time spent doing field hockey drills because they just can't do it on the grass. Those, the only point that I think is important.
No, that's something we hadn't considered. Great point. Mr. Corey, send you a piece. Mike, you good?
Yep.
Nice. I'll open it up to anybody from the public. Again, if you do have a question, just ask the channel the question through me and just give us your name and address, not all at once. Ms. Boone?
Lisa Boone. I just, it's pretty obvious to me. Obviously, we have a lot of problems with our fields, but overuse is absolutely the #1 problem. I believe that very strongly. And, I'm not a huge advocate of turf, although I see that it really is beneficial to certain sports. And it makes sense that we have at least one turf field in our town somewhere to accommodate those particular sports. And certainly in particular, when we added lacrosse, there was no field added. There was no field added. We added a lacrosse program and we didn't add a field. And we added a youth football program, and I mean, I have many sons, and my oldest played youth football in Westford when it was Littleton Westford, and they played in Westford, and when we moved to Littleton, there was no field added. And so Littleton, the town of Littleton, people have to understand that a lot of this has come on because we were trying to accommodate the need in our town for the growing sports programs, which I think are fantastic for all kids. I think it's great to be on a team because you get so many benefits outside of just the sport itself. But when you do that, if you don't accommodate that properly, you're going to wear out whatever you have, period. There's just no way around it, and so if we wanted to put grass in instead of turf, you need to build at least one other field, more than one other field, really 2 in my opinion, if you're going to accommodate the programs we have. And I don't think the town is prepared to do that, nor is the time available. We could have done that years ago, which they talked about it. They've tried to get other fields. Never happened. We've tried to have indoor sports facilities built in our town twice. I know 2 different people who came up in 2 different areas of the town, and it never happened. So the town has to understand that this is where we're lacking, is field time and having proper field space to accommodate our programs, which are flourishing. I mean, it's amazing how many great coaches and programs that we have in our town for our students. I just can't speak to the, benefits to that. And I just think that people need to commend our town for doing that, because many of those programs are these programs where the parents are volunteering, the kids get involved. It's a great social time for people to meet and to gather, and then you have great high school programs. I can't tell you how many other towns around have said, Littleton has amazing sports, even the youth sports. Littleton has an amazing soccer program. Littleton has an amazing basketball. You hear it all the time. And so I just think that we have to recognize that what they've been trying to do to manage the field problem for so many years has really deteriorated, the athlete's ability to progress forward, to not, injuries are going to be a significant problem. I hate to hear about that. I walk too many fields. They're bad. I'm sorry. I don't think it's just maintenance. I do think it's the overuse, which is the bigger problem. And so trying to address that properly. And if people are against artificial surfaces, they have to be realistic and recognize that we would need to build other fields on top of just repairing and refurbishing the Alumni field, which is a great part of our town. So I think we've waited too long, in my opinion. And so I want people to be realistic and recognize that.
Can I just comment on that?
Of course.
That's a perfect point too with that, because synthetic, if this was to go through, we would play in the fall, next fall. Natural grass, we probably wouldn't be able to touch that for
At least 18 months.
at least 18 months. So like the middle school field was just put new grass down in August. They won't be able to touch that this fall, obviously. We're not gonna be able to play there this spring for lacrosse. So we probably won't be able to get on that maybe till next fall. So that's the other thing you have to think about is the amount of time you're gonna have to shut an entire field down 18 months, while you're shifting 18 months of hard use lacrosse, whatever sports, football, everything's gotta go to another facility while they upgrade that. That's just another thing you have to think about.
Well, certainly you could put down, you know, some nice turf, like you could, the sod, you could certainly sod fields, but, you know, again, you're gonna pay top dollar to create fields, and you still would have, like I said, you would definitely have to build at least one and probably 2 more fields, and one of them really should be artificial if you don't want it, you know. On Alumni, there should be consideration of an artificial turf field somewhere else in town to accommodate the programs that really need them.
Lisa, I think you made some good points, and I think capacity is the term that we've used a couple of times tonight. And in order for us to add capacity, we either have to do exactly what you're saying, is, you know, build something up at Cooper perhaps, maybe the Morgan property, somewhere else, you know.
There's been lots of
site to be named later. So there's certainly the need for adding capacity. What we have here is in one rectangular space, we can add a lot of the capacity that will allow us to kind of buy time and let fields potentially rest. Get some of those hard playing sports. To Mike's point, you know, before we had lacrosse and youth football, we were managing. We had decent fields, and if we can get back to that point, we can do our field study with the added capacity at Alumni. I think that it will put us in a better spot, and hopefully we can be mindful of not making repeating mistakes. And taking a look at our history and try to make sure that we don't repeat those mistakes. You have something else to say?
I was going to say one more comment. I think that it's going to be absolutely critical of you guys to fund good engineering, because I think that we've seen on multiple fields, you know, I mean, Corpor's one of them. I mean, there's areas that are sopping wet when it rains. It doesn't drain properly in certain areas. You know, I want to make sure that the investment we put into Alumni Field, you know, there's some significant and proper engineering, so that, because even with artificial turf, if that's what's decided, you have to have proper drainage. You know, my son has played at Fort Kicks before, the outdoor turf field there. There's parts that don't drain properly, and when it rains, you cannot play on the surface because of it. So it happens. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen here, but just being, you know, very aware and conscientious of the fact that even artificial surfaces need to have proper drainage, or if it rains, you're not going to be able to play on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the point that the rep that came in from one of the turf companies, he made, and the engineer from Gale made, is that it's the foundation. That's what's critical, is you need to build that correctly. Mm-hmm. And then whatever you put on top of that is
right. Whether it's
icing.
Natural or artificial, you know, that is going to be very important. And, you know, I'm not a field engineer either,
so
but I've seen too many fields that have problems.
The designers that we've chosen, Gale Associates has done a number of fields. They did the soccer facility, mass soccer facility out in Lancaster, mm-hmm. which is, I think, it's 23 total fields, 5 of which are...
Been there.
Yeah. So, Gary, is it 5 synthetic and the rest grass, or is the other way around?
5 synthetic and 13 grass.
So, you know, so Gale designed that and oversaw the engineering of that facility, and they've done countless, of that list of 20 that Mike put up there, they probably did 50% of those fields, at least in the design phase. So I think we've picked the right partner to work with. I reached out to 11 of the communities, municipalities that I personally reached out to 11 of the municipalities where they've built, and did reference checks with the municipalities, the schools, and they had nothing but great things to say about them. There's been no issues, some of which were built 5 years ago, some of them are in progress right now, to Task Road, for instance. So it's, I think we have the right partner as far as to assuage any of your engineering concerns. I think they'll do a good job, and we'll oversee that, and we'll make sure that we get a good deliverable, regardless of what we move forward with. All right, does anybody else have anything they wanted to add or ask? Speak now? No?
I'd like to say I'm Maureen Woods in Shelby Road. I wanted to just thank all the coaches and athletes and Mike for doing as well as they have. I mean, Diane hasn't lost a game. She's a tie. They have lost. Field Hockey has not lost a game, despite all of these hardships. And I just think that our athletes and our coaches deserve better. And thank you for all your hard work. I know you guys have been meeting every week, and we do know that.
We're getting pretty close.
Yes.
In regards to the, the amount of money that we're talking, as we look at how you can spend tax dollars in a town, what better possible usage for tax dollars than spending it on something that will directly impact, not hundreds, thousands of kids during its lifespan. Our own kids and kids that come to our town. Right now, kids come to our town, and I am embarrassed. The fields that Mike talked about, I'm not embarrassed about our baseball and softball fields, our softball field when it's dry, or Whitcomb Field, or Jet, or our track. We've done those. But I am embarrassed by our field that we play JV soccer on, and we play boys lacrosse on, and I'm embarrassed by our playing soccer on Alumni. I'm embarrassed by every girls lacrosse contest we play. It's terrible, and soccer over there, but want to give those parents the night game. And frankly, football games, not great there either. And, doing this facility right, thousands of kids would get the opportunity to play at a facility that they'd be proud to play on. Because right now, I'm embarrassed, and I think, I'm sure kids are a little bit like, well, this is what we got. And I give a lot of credit to a lot of parents and kids that, because there is a market now for people to look for something better. And, a lot of people have a lot of Littleton pride, and they just, this is it, we're Littleton Tigers, we're staying here. We don't have a turf field or whatever, but, this is something that would be money well spent. And then the other thing too, a lot of people talk about how do we keep kids out of trouble, off drugs. You keep kids engaged all the time. They go to school and they keep them engaged in positive things, athletics and arts beyond the school day. You keep them out of trouble. You keep them focused, keep them on the track you want them to. Again, this is also money you'd be spending on prevention of problems for kids. Anytime you put money into something that benefits kids, you're spending your money in the right place. More subjective from your athletic director, but anyways.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
We're all ready. All right. Any other comments? All right. Mike, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Diane, thanks. Gary, I saw you when I was looking back at Lisa. Did you have anything to add as a coach at the high school? I know you came up and you presented with us.
Yeah. It's funny, I asked my girls, the high school varsity girls, what would they prefer to do? And every single one of them said they'd prefer to have night games on synthetic fields. Well, half of them play club soccer. Most of their games are on synthetic fields. They want their parents to be able to come to see them at nighttime. Every girl, not one girl said no, which surprised me, but that's what they said.
Okay. Thank you.
One more question that's come up. With the schedule you put up, you'd have to stagger the practice times, obviously, so you look at, like, boys lacrosse, I think you had at 5 o'clock practice. Would there be any logistical issues getting that team over there at 5 o'clock as opposed to right after school?
So it was a 3 to 4:30 block and a 4:30 to 6. The 3 o'clock block, we already do it because we already have girls lacrosse over there. So we work with our bus company. We run a shuttle that loops through the front circle every day at 2:30. And because we already have to transport track kids, right? We had 113 kids running track last year. So we had to get track over there. We had to get girls lacrosse over there every day. So by programming, we have that mechanism already in place. If we get a synthetic surface, we're going to have to expand that shuttle bus to the fall because we'll now have a field hockey team that daily has to get over there. The older kids just drive their cars, but really talking about your 9th and 10th graders.
Right.
We've worked with the bus company. It's a little tricky because the kids, they need to make sure they're down that lower circle at 2:30, but we bus them over there, we drop them off.
But the other thing to keep in mind is that the reality of the situation is that you've got basketball teams, both middle school and high school based, the hockey team, you can't guarantee that everybody's gonna practice after school. It just doesn't happen. So it's a reality, the families adjust, the older kids can take care of themselves to a great degree, but the younger kids, the families just work it out. You carpool, you do what you do, you've been doing your whole life. You know, you figure out, you have to make it work. But these sports would not be the only ones that are faced with this type of situation. Logistic, yeah, we do it all the time.
Yeah, the 4:30 practice slot, those kids, we get out of school at 1:56. They would go home.
Yeah.
They would go home, they'd have a snack, whatever, and like Mike said, they carpool, you know, they have different days, they get there, but for the early slot, where the kids would not go home, we would do the shuttle for that like we've been doing. And we would expand it to the fall for field hockey to get them over there daily. And so, you know, we've already been kind of have that in place.
Again, there are schools that can do that. They have 3 gyms, so 3 teams practice coming right out of school. 3 basketball teams, bang,
Right.
and they're done, and they go home. We're not that town. We've never been that town, and we're probably never going to be that town. You know, we're trying to get better. We're not looking for, you know, the Rolls Royce of facilities where, you know, international management group, you go down to high school and you can have your own gym. Each kid can have their own freaking gym. We don't have that. Or they have their own gold shootout. We don't have that. You know, we're not going to have that. We're just asking to have a little bit more than we already do. So we'll make it work. If we get it, we'll make it work.
Good. I'm good. All right. Thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And I guess that's it. Thanks. We're going to move on to the agenda. We get the next item up on the agenda is actually, if I can grab that thumb drive for you so I can make a copy of it. I'll get back to you. Thank you.
You won't. You'll go right on your desk with the rest of them. Like my collection. Cool.
All right, so we've got member input. So does anybody have anything beyond what we've been discussing tonight that wanted to bring up or any input? No. Michael? Melissa? Carl?
I'll just say that the contract with Gail has passed through town council. So all we have to do now is
Execute.
execute.
Okay. Awesome, thanks. And your next meeting is?
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow, okay.
Carl, what did the final number end up being?
I may have it here, but it was, I want to say 79, not exact, but something.
79,000?
I mean, oh, no, for the design phase. The final number for what?
Design.
For the contract with Gail.
Contract.
What do you think?
Yeah, the
79, yes.
79,000.
I mean, like I said,
So we
that's
came
not
way under
exact.
budget, right? Didn't we budget
250?
250?
Well, it makes perfect sense, seeing how they were gonna do 2 of them done for 130.
Okay.
Just a little more work on this one.
No. 70, 7485.
Carl beat him up.
Carl, open your mouth one more time, see if it goes down again. Look again.
Would you say 70,485?
7485, yeah.
7485.
And we budgeted-
70,045.
Yeah, and we budgeted
250.
250, or
235.
234, yeah, 234 and change.
Don't give it.
I don't know where the change came from.
What about it?
Finance guy, right? I have input, although I think you...
No, absolutely, yeah. We just, you good, Carl?
Yeah.
You said you're all set?
Almost set.
I'll go to you next. No, I like skipping it. Go ahead.
I had just thought about, you know, kind of some of the numbers that were thrown out, and obviously some of it was unexpected, and, you know, I kind of took a step back and thought of it as a taxpayer, and, you know, yes, we have to figure out budget, and yes, we need to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars and be budget conscious, but I also feel like we need to be forward-thinking, and we need to, you know, not have missed opportunities. Like I keep hearing we have missed opportunities, and so I think we really need to strike the balance between, you know, whatever the budget is and what the community's needs are, and not say, oh, okay, you know, because, yeah, there's the number we wanted, and then perhaps there's reality, there's bathrooms we weren't expecting, you know, there's always something, you know,
Sure.
we're not professionals, there's, you know, there's always something that's not planned for, and so I had just taken a step back as a taxpayer and thought about, you know, please be a good steward of my dollars in the sense that we're forward-thinking and not just trying to not shove, I guess that's the wrong word, but like fit something in a box that
No, you're right.
doesn't make sense.
Spend to the budget and get as much as we can.
Yeah. Yeah.
But don't miss out.
And don't miss out on
Don't look back 5 years
incremental.
later and say,
We
geez,
should've.
this
Like
is really
incremental
kind of great. Exactly.
opportunity.
This isn't an optimal solution. We
Yeah.
spent an awful lot of money for an extra 10%. We could have optimized
That's
it,
exactly
you
my
know?
point.
And you're right. It's a fine line because, you know, we've done a couple of these projects before. You don't want to open the purse strings right away because then you'll make different
course.
bad decisions.
No,
You
of
know,
course.
and you're really trying to walk that line. But I think you bring up a great point. I appreciate you doing that. It's like, you know, let's try to hold to it, but let's not be penny wise and pound foolish.
Exactly.
You know, let's just, and if somebody should feel free to say, wait a minute, I think we need to think about increasing the budget a little bit for this reason, because we're gonna
Right.
kick ourselves in the pants down the road if we don't do this the right way this time, right now.
And I think
you
we
know?
gave John some of that guidance last week.
Yeah.
I know I made the point of, you know, if it ends up being that we need to get another 300,000 or 500,000, something like that, we'll
Reevaluate.
try to find a way.
Reevaluate.
And see if
Good
that's
point.
something we need
It's
to
a
do.
really good
point.
It's very good point.
And now's the time to make that, be cognizant of that point,
Yeah.
Yep.
not a week before town meeting.
Yep.
Tom? I'm good. Michael?
I would just say, you know, we see a lot of new faces here tonight, and that's good. I think from this point forward, and even, you know, probably starting last week, these meetings are going to be, you know, so important as far as staying engaged in the process and figuring out for yourself what's actually going on. So I'd encourage you, if you can't make it to the meetings, watch the videos, kind of decide for yourself as far as, you know, how you feel, what you think the merits of this project are.
Just send all your emails to Mike. It's Mike Prue at.
And we only have two more, right? The 12th
We
and
have
the
two on the-
18th.
Yeah,
we only have two on the schedule right now.
We'll be meeting right up to town meeting.
Right.
I don't see how we couldn't be.
Next week, our meeting is with Gail, so it kind of rolls into, actually, rolls right into kind of our strategy for Gail, so I'm just going to move aside, approve town minutes, and I haven't had a whole lot of public input. That's on the agenda for next. Does anybody want to be heard before we move forward with our strategy? I'll come back. If you want to be heard, just raise your hand. I promise you I'll call in. So as far as the strategy for meeting with Gail next week, he's gone back to the drawing board. He's taken all the input, and I kind of redlined one of the drawings, that PDFs that he gave us. So I'd welcome any input. We've kind of charged him with going back to the drawing board, seeing what we can come up with, being budget conscious, moving the concession stand in facilities or amenities building to kind of the location where the existing concession stand is, and maintaining some sort of a pathway between the softball field and the LMS end of the football stadium, the football field, or the rectangular field.
Multi-purpose field.
Thank you. What field hockey on? Is there anything else that we think that we need to address with John at this meeting? I'd rather kind of have some of that discussion now, so that when he's here, we can kind of hammer anything out that we need to hammer out.
So, I wasn't here last week, but I watched it, most of it. I tried. I couldn't get through all of it.
Sorry.
The thing kept saying 140 minutes, and it wouldn't stop saying that. Did we ever get to, like, some kind of cover? Awning, you know, the cover for the teams, or was that ever brought up, or was
It was brought up.
Okay. And was he going to try to see what he could work out? Or did you feel like that was just not doable?
I think based on the numbers we got back, that was an easy cut for us to make.
Yeah, I think we
That's
can-
fine, I just didn't hear it, so I just wanted to make sure.
We're gonna do a community build, Mike.
Okay.
Yeah.
But didn't we?
Kirby left. Kirby's the king of the community build. He's got
We
done.
just built 850 of us, just built a playground.
That's right.
Didn't we talk about thinking about with the structure, doing a little overhang? Like, just looking at it, just to see, like, how much is that? Is that 20 grand? What is that?
So I think the overhang, though, was for patrons coming up to the window, so that they're not, so that the edge of the roof doesn't come right down on top of them if it is raining, or...
Gotcha.
That's what I understand the overhang.
That's
Yeah,
probably
you're
right.
right. Yep.
But, yeah, Julie brought up the fact that we had just come on the heels of the casting of trees. We've seen that the community does step up, and we've done projects on this very site. We've done projects where scouts have gotten involved and communities.
You could even do
members have gotten
like
involved.
like a tarp type thing, like that pull out.
Those sails, kind of, that they
Something
use
like
for
that,
shade
yeah.
and that kind of thing. Yeah. And there's probably plenty of options that we can
All right.
do.
Like a bistro feel.
After effect, exactly. With some nice cafe tables out there.
Yeah.
Keurig machine.
You got a question?
Yes, ma'am?
There's lots of Boy Scouts that are coming up on Eagle Scout.
There you go.
We'll
Yeah.
have that resource. Thank you. Who are you?
They're much smarter than we are. Anyway, so we should leave it to them.
Supposed to identify yourself.
Can you turn on the microphone too? Do you want to repeat what I said so that it can be recorded?
I've been notified that there are a lot of Eagle Scouts coming up, a lot of scouts that are coming up on their Eagle Scout projects, so there'll be some opportunities to get some community build projects done through those means. Thank you, Judith. So as far as strategy, we're good? We don't have anything discussed relative to Gale. Carl's taking care of the contractual end of it.
See what they bring.
Whose hand was up first? Fight it
Oh,
out.
I was, Diane had her hand up.
Kelly, go ahead.
Kelly Mullen, Washington Drive. I know it was discussed a little bit last week, I think after Gail left, about the possibility of having the parking lot designed in case somehow money happens to
Yeah, so he
become
was,
available.
he was
Is-
still in the room.
Okay.
Yeah, so we definitely want to, we've contracted with them for services to do the design work, so we want to pay, we want to get as much as we can out of that,
Okay.
for the check that we're writing. So the design will be there. If it comes to the point where that, was it $457,000 or $357,000? $457,000 for parking, some of which will end up still incorporating into the program. But let's say it's $350,000 that we end up saying, it's going to have to be something that we'll have to phase out and have designed so that maybe we do come back. And that's where maybe, Julie, to your point, that we'll have to have that tough conversation and figure out, is this something that the town wants to keep in there? Do we want to pull it out? Do we want to put it as an alt ad? Does the school department or the board of selectmen want to step up and say, you know what, we don't want that to come out, we'll find a way to make it happen? So those are some conversations we're going to have. But we're definitely going to get it designed with kind of that final drawing that he'll come with next week. And then once we tweak that and further finalize that, we'll definitely want it designed to that point. Fully knowing that everything that's on that design will likely not happen. Correct. Diane.
Diane Corey. So, quick question. I was not here last week, and so I don't know what the design does have. Does it have the restrooms or anything?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, it does have an amenities building, which would be a concession stand, a little 2x2 box for Gary Austin. Oh, he's not here anymore. It would have concessions, bathrooms, and potentially some storage. So we're kind of working through that, and they're working with their architect to try to figure out how much we can get out of it. So I do have, he came with 3 designs last week, so after the meeting, if people want to come up, I'll put them out here, and if people want to come up and take a look at them, I'll lay them out and, answer any questions that anybody might have.
The reason being is that I know in most sports, if there is lightning, the teams do have to have some place to go.
Well, right now, they would go to the schools.
The schools are going to be open for them
Yes.
to go to?
Yep.
Down there?
Yep. All our schools are open in the afternoons anyway for other activities, so for practices, and then obviously on game night, the facilities are open, we will make them open.
They will be
Yep.
open,
Yep.
okay. Thank you.
We prefer to have something closer, but that sufficed in the past, and it will continue to be available.
And if people weren't there, you obviously have the overhang in front of the school and middle school and the overhang at
Over Russell.
Russell Street. Okay.
And Mike can bring that van down from the police department. As the players call it, the prison van.
Community outreach.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Gets us down here on Friday nights.
So, all right. Does anybody else have anything to add? Pretty open, flexible. So as far as strategy, we're good. Our next meeting is next Wednesday night. We do have a couple of sets of minutes. Hopefully, folks have had a chance to get them out. Julie did forward on her copy of minutes. They should be in front of you. And Melissa, thank you for taking the minutes tonight. Should have those done by about 10 o'clock
Yeah,
tonight.
I have no more paper left in my book. My arm hurts. I know.
All right, you ready?
Sure.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from September 8, 2016.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. All those, any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from September 14th, 2016.
Seconded. So moved and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Wait. What if somebody has any?
Any discussion?
Thank you.
Yeah, 'cause you always do that at school committee.
I might do it quick, but I do it.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, so next meeting is next Wednesday night, right here. Gale Associates will be in the room
7:30 or 7?
at 7:30.
7:30.
7:30, so as soon as you can get here is great. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
You don't have to do that for that one.
No? Someone might have something to add. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great week.
Thanks for coming.